Hello, everyone. This recording is being done a little impromptu. I didn't really plan out what I was going to say. I just finished reading Peter Zeihan's first book, The Accidental Superpower: The Next Generation of American Preeminence and the Coming Global Disorder. And I just finished it about an hour ago. And I kind of figured instead of sitting down and, at least kind of planning out or making an outline of what I wanted to talk about, why don't I just record something quick and impromptu? I have a busy weekend and I don't want to, put this off forever and forever. But yeah, to jump right into the book, Peter Zeihan, he's a geostrategist. He runs his own consulting firm where he goes around to different organizations. As far as I can tell, mostly agricultural organizations, but he goes around to other trade groups and organizations to discuss how geopolitics will affect their market. And he gives them advice on, based on his analysis, what's going to come next. So therefore, you should do X and Y and avoid Z and so on. So back in 2014, he had this published. I think it's probably based on the work that his consulting firm does. And what it is, I guess it is his opinion, of course. It's his analysis of how he expects the near future to shape out. Now, of course, this was published in 2014, so I'm sure the analysis is probably, 2013/2014. So even though it's a few years old, I still wanted to read it just to kind of get the sense of, was he right? Now that it's 2019, 5 years later, the timeline in his book covers 2015 through 2030. As far as his, I don't, predictions aren't a good word. His expectations is probably better. It's a little looser. He's not saying X and Y will definitely happen on this date. He's kind of giving general trends and likely, his opinion on where likely conflicts will rise and which nations will have a tougher time than others. So don't expect, this isn't a crystal ball that he's reading off from. But just, I guess my overall impression with the book, forgetting about the analysis for a moment, I was kind of disappointed in spending time reading it. Not because it wasn't any good, but before approaching the book, I had listened to several of his presentations that are on YouTube. And there's several out there. They run roughly an hour long. They're very interesting. I enjoyed them. That's how I found out who he is. That's how I even found out this book exists. I listened to him, enjoyed him, and then I picked up this book, and I just feel like I didn't get anything more than what I got out of those YouTube videos. So, if you're pressed for time, watch one of those videos, and you can kind of skip this book. Now, that said, there is, of course, more detail in the book. I mean, the first, I think, 9 chapters, you're not even talking about the modern world. You're understanding, I guess, actually, it's probably useful to you as a primer on what geopolitics is. So if you're not familiar with that field at all, well, there is something to be gained from reading those first 9 chapters, because he goes into some real detail around how his analysis works, what it's based upon, and then he pulls out several historical examples of how societies were shaped by their geography and how that led to their power rise and eventual fall, and how that contributed to how their economies took shape, how their governments were formed, and so on. So just kind of flashing back here in my memory, I know he talks a lot about Egypt. He talks a lot about the British Empire, the rise of Japan as a naval power. There's a lot in there about understanding why Russia is gigantic, and a bunch of other stuff too. These are just my memories here that I'm kind of pulling out from nowhere, so I'm not being that comprehensive. So yeah, as someone who wants to understand geopolitics better, this is useful as an introduction. So then after chapter 9, the second half of that book is around his prediction, sorry, his expectations for 2015 through 2030. What's going to happen in the world. And, the short answer is in the title. America's going to do pretty well. But it seems to be not because we're, doing anything well or smarter or anything like that, or not because we are rich. Really, it comes down to we have the most fortunate geography on Earth, and that is the reason why we are rich and peaceful and prosperous. Because we have this geography, and obviously that's not going to just up and change, in the middle of the night. Yeah, that's going to hold true through the next period. So the key shift that's coming over the next few years, and I'll get to how that's being formed, but the key shift that he identifies here in his 2014 book is how the Bretton Woods economic system and the trade system built up adjacent to it is going to go away. And what that system is, super short summary, the U.S. after World War II guaranteed freedom of the seas. So other nations could stop, building up their navies, they could stop building up their empires, stop fighting with each other, stop fighting, over colonies. They would have free access to the seas. They would have mostly free access to the U.S. market to sell their goods. So really, it made these colonial empires obsolete by making them more expensive than it was worth to keep them going. You had the choice, if you're a nation in 1946, of you could go along with the U.S.'s plan, or you could rebuild from World War II and then also challenge the U.S. on the high seas, and probably have to fend off Russia, Soviet Union at the time, fend off the Soviets' advances at the same time you're doing all that. Also, you could maintain your own empire and, of course, keep down whichever people you've conquered. So why on earth do that? Yeah, so the post-war economic and trade order has been going strong now, these roughly 70 years. But now he's saying, okay, well, it's been great, but now it's coming to an end. The U.S. is going to start disengaging from the world. And really, this is driven by the end of the Cold War. We're just in this post-Cold War sort of afterglow now. Oh, hooray for victory, but I guess history hasn't really woken up yet. Except now it's starting to come out of its slumber. The U.S. is going to start disengaging. It's going to be more focused on, instead of an international global system, it's going to be focused on taking care of itself. Not that we're really going to be Fortress America and walling ourselves off from Earth, but our motivations are going to be driven far more strictly by what are we getting out of it. We're not going to defend the seas, and free access to them for everyone. We're going to care about trade routes that, are important to the United States for whatever products we export, whatever products we need to import. But short of that, we're just not going to be bothered to defend other nations and their trade. And for that matter, we're going to be a lot more skeptical and stricter about who we allow to come to America and sell their goods as well. So this was back in 2014, back in the Obama era. And, well, now sitting here in 2019, watching the Trump presidency unfold, it really does seem like Peter Zeihan here really did do a pretty good job calling these trends. Remember in 2014, Trump wasn't anything. He didn't really start making a little bit of noise until 2015. And, in 2015, who believed he was going to be elected? And even if he was, who believes he was going to be able to change anything? Except now, here we are in 2019, and, trade wars with how many countries around the world. Whether you like him or hate him, he's definitely having an impact on the global trade order. And it looks like that impact is kind of matching up with what Peter wrote here, that the U.S. is beginning to pull back from the world. We're going to be a lot more skeptical about free trade. We're going to be a lot more skeptical about allowing other nations to come here and sell, at least if they're not going to be producing here. So, now that we're roughly a third of the way through his prediction period, 2015 through 2030, and now we're just roughly a third in. Well, that means I think if his track record holds, the next 10 years are going to be mean a lot more conflict and a lot more state failures around the world. Definitely very interesting to read and understand. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Peter Zeihan, I'd recommend this as just an idea of a way to get some ideas on where the trouble spots in the world are likely to be in the next decade. But if you're pressed for time, those YouTube videos really give a decent summary. I mean, you're not going to get down to the detail of many individual nations, but you'll get the broad contours, the big ones like China and Russia and how conflict will happen in Asia and in Europe. So you'll get the broad brushstrokes, and that's probably enough. So it's a recommend depending upon, who you are listening to this. Whether you're just thirsty for as much knowledge as possible, go for it. Or if you just need like a real quick summary, stick to YouTube. But with that said, I plan to read his second book right after the first one, but I don't know. I think I need a little break from, geopolitics for a bit. So I'm probably going to pick up something next. I'm going to try to make it short too, just to give myself a little break. So I'll pick up another book to start reading. Otherwise, I was thinking, because I do have a copy of Machiavelli here that I meant to read, so maybe I'll start with that. I'll get through that, and then I'll return with another commentary on Peter Zeihan's second book, The Absent Superpower, The Shale Revolution and a World Without America. So stay tuned, and thank you for listening, and all the other YouTube crap that people say, like and subscribe and whatever, I don't know. Have a good one.